So the logical thing to do is push through it, isn't it? Like I'm going to come this far. Unfold? I don't think so. Common sense and logic. So, do we have any common sense? Valid question, isn't it, really? What we're going to talk about. Common sense. Right? Common sense. Earth, moon, sun. During an eclipse, the three are in line. All right, we don't have to keep going over it and over it again and again. But during a solar eclipse, when the moon is smack bang in between Earth and the sun, there is a straight line running right through the four things: Earth, the shadow, the moon, and the sun. It is obviously absolute light. Common sense. This is a common sense issue. It's not about science. It is not about science. And logic. Is it logical to think that there are photons that are taking 8 minutes and 20 seconds to reach the moon, which then casts a shadow onto Earth 1.3 seconds later? No, it isn't logical. It defies both logic and common sense. It defies both logic and common sense. So to believe that there are packets of salt and vinegar crisps, massless, invisible, traveling at 299,792,458 meters per second, it is purely a lack of common sense. It has to be said. It is. It has to be said. And then, yeah, it defies both logic and common sense. The World Science Festival. Just listen to this, right? About a couple of minutes.
All right, jumping right in, I think many of us are familiar with this quote that's often attributed to Lord Kelvin, although it's unclear whether Lord Kelvin actually ever said it, but the sentiment is certainly an interesting one to take a look at. I'll read it from here so I can see it. The great principles have already been discovered in physics will be henceforth limited to finding truth in the sixth place of decimals. Now, whether or not this was actually said in those words, I think there was a feeling at the end of the 19th century that a lot of things had been figured out, and maybe what was left were details. People were wrong, but what led, Andy, do you think people to have at least a certain kind of confidence that maybe physics was reaching an end?
Go.
You hear that semi-periodically that physics has reached an end. We've reached the end of what we can understand, and that happens. And but then somebody comes up with usually a completely new and unexpected idea about how to go forward, and something that might have seemed like a small little corner. Indeed, I think when Lord Kelvin, maybe I have the dates wrong, but there was already the Michelson Morley experiment, and that was like, we just had to explain that little experiment. And out of that little experiment grew all of relativity. And so we never know if we make a program about how physics should proceed on into the future, we will surely fail. Because the real route is somewhere we can't expect.
Yeah, see,
And that keeps
Yep.
happening and happening.
I was going to move on, but I can't help but jump to David Gross, who was shaking his head throughout your entire answer.
No, Andy's answer is fine. I just don't understand Lord Kelvin.
Ah,
I mean, at that time, there was no theory of matter in any form. We didn't know how stars shine. I can't believe he made this statement since I have enormous respect for him.
maybe he didn't, right?
That's probably correct. But people love that because it puts, these elitist scientists to shame. How wrong they were.
Well, regardless of whether Kelvin said something like that or not, it is true that lots of things that ultimately became part of physics weren't even part of what physicists even imagined being.
All of it. The whole shebang is a charade. You know how we know? Because using common sense, right? Using common sense, you can work out during an eclipse, for me, that maybe I am expecting a package. Let me just run. My disappointment is real. I was over the other side of the road. Where were we? If you have common sense, you'll see it for exactly what it is. If you're lacking a little bit of common sense, then you'll believe that somehow photons took 8 minutes and 20 seconds to reach the moon, which then casts its shadow at the same time as the sun is directly behind the moon, but it can't be. So we're going to push through with this one, and you either have it or you don't. You believe what's in front of your own two eyes, or you don't. How long have I got? 7:20, 20. I've got another 30 seconds or so. Just go forward somewhere, anywhere.
Extraordinarily exciting. This was a framework in which one could produce as vibrations of one fundamental object all the stuff we saw. And furthermore, there was nothing else we saw that didn't fit into this framework. So, okay, here, obviously we're on the clue to find the unique theory that Einstein was looking
Yeah.
for.
And I can't help but just jumping in.
How did you do it to yourselves, honestly? All right, say it, peeps.